Welcome back to Chat Like a Native. Let me ask you something. When you speak English, do you ever feel like your brain has to work through a traffic jam? You hear the English, translate it to your own language, think of an answer, translate it back, and by the time you're ready to speak, the conversation has moved on. After today's episode, you are going to learn how to completely bypass that translation trap. You'll be able to reach for English words instantly and speak with natural speed. Here's the secret. Stop waiting for the perfect study time at your desk. Real fluency is built in the boring moments of your normal day. Your morning routine, your commute, your lunch break, these repeat every single day, which makes them the ultimate training ground for thinking in English. To help you master this, we have a simple memory tool. Just remember the word DARTD, daily routine. Anchor your practice to things you already do. A, action. Describe what you are doing in the moment. R, reason. Add why you are doing it to build natural sentences. T, talk. Pick one thought a day and say it out loud. Throw a dart at your daily schedule and you'll hit fluency. Stay with us because we're about to show you exactly how to build this habit minute by minute, starting from the moment you wake up.
It's actually fascinating how completely backwards our standard approach to learning a language usually is. Like, we build up these massive, intimidating expectations in our heads about what learning is supposed to look like.
Right, usually involving like absolute silence, a desk, and a bunch of highlighters.
Exactly. We treat language like it's a history subject.
Yeah.
You sit down, you memorize a list of facts, in this case vocabulary and grammar rules, and then you just close the book and walk away.
But fluency isn't really a measure of how large your vocabulary is it? It's more about speed.
Yes, it is entirely a measure of access speed. I mean, what good is having 10,000 English words stored in your brain if you can't retrieve a single one of them when a colleague randomly asks you a question in the hallway?
Yeah, and that's exactly where you hit that four-step traffic jam we mentioned in the intro. You hear the English phrase, you mentally translate it into your native language to understand it, craft your witty response, and then scramble to translate it back into English.
Which is just cognitively exhausting. And, more importantly, it's simply too slow for natural human conversation. Speech moves incredibly fast. If you're doing that internal translation dance, the person you're talking to has already moved on by the time you open your mouth.
It kind of reminds me of trying to learn how to drive a car by sitting in a parked vehicle and just reading the owner's manual.
Oh, that's a phenomenal analogy.
Like you can memorize where the turn signal is, but the second you merge onto a busy highway surrounded by moving traffic, you're just going to freeze. The theory hasn't been connected to any real kinetic reality.
You haven't experienced the stress of velocity. And there's a very specific neuroscientific reason why that parked car method fails. When you just memorize a word from a flashcard at your desk, the neural pathway you're building is incredibly thin and fragile.
Because it's just completely isolated.
Right. Your brain hasn't attached any spatial, emotional, or physical significance to it. But when you connect language to a physical action in your actual environment, you engage entirely different parts of your brain, like your spatial memory and the motor cortex.
So if we take a word like charge, as in charging a device, sitting at a desk reading the verb to charge means almost nothing to the brain.
It's just abstract ink on a page. But imagine you are physically holding your phone. You see the red battery icon. You feel that tiny spike of cortisol, that anxiety of a dying phone.
Oh yeah, we all know that feeling.
Right. You physically grab the cable, push it into the wall, and consciously think to yourself in English, I need to charge my phone before I leave. You have just hardwired that vocabulary word into your physical reality. Your brain retains it exponentially faster because it's tied to action and environment.
Because tomorrow my phone is inevitably going to die again, and the next day. So the repetition required for fluency is already just built right into the fabric of my life?
Precisely. You don't have to schedule practice time. You just have to utilize the time you're already spending.
Okay, so if we know we need to get out of the parked car and onto the highway of daily life, where is the on-ramp? I guess this brings us to the D and the A in our DART method, daily routine and action.
And the morning is the ideal incubator for this habit.
Why the morning specifically?
Because it is the most highly predictable part of your entire day. The vast majority of us do the exact same sequence of physical actions every single morning. The alarm goes off, we throw off the covers, walk to the bathroom, turn on the coffee maker.
Right, it requires zero mental energy.
Exactly. And because those physical actions require zero mental energy, your brain has excess cognitive capacity available to focus entirely on language encoding.
I'm trying to picture what this looks like practically, though. Am I supposed to be giving motivational speeches to my toaster tomorrow morning?
No, not at all. You start by assigning your brain very small, manageable English labels. Stick to the simple present or present continuous tense. As your body performs the action, your mind produces the thought. I wake up. I am getting out of bed. I am making coffee.
I have to pause here and push back on this a little because I know exactly what the listener's thinking. If I spend my morning wandering around my kitchen narrating, I am opening the fridge, the milk is cold, I am holding a spoon, I am going to feel ridiculous.
Oh, I completely understand that hesitation. It feels incredibly robotic at first.
Yeah, like infantile almost. If my ultimate goal is to lead a complex project meeting at work, how does pretending to be a toddler identifying a spoon actually help me? It feels like regression.
It does feel that way, but you have to look at the underlying mechanics. The goal of I am holding a spoon isn't to expand your vocabulary. You already know what a spoon is. The goal is to aggressively reroute your brain's default setting.
Oh, I see.
Right now, your brain's default mode network narrates your life in your native language. By forcing these simple English labels, you are actively blocking your native language from taking the wheel.
So it's not about the complexity of the thought at all. It's about greasing the gears of the machine before you turn on the engine. If I can't think I'm holding a spoon without translating it first, I definitely can't negotiate a contract without translating.
Exactly that. You're lubricating the neural pathways. You're establishing a baseline habit where English is the immediate tool you use to interact with reality, and you use the physical objects in your home as micro-triggers.
So I don't need a 20-minute internal monologue.
No, that's exhausting. You just need 10-second bursts. You see your keys on the counter, and that visual trigger prompts the thought, I need my keys. You grab your coat, and you think it's cold outside today. 10 seconds of English, repeated 20 times a day, fundamentally alters your brain's relationship with the language.
That makes a lot of sense. We've greased the gears with these simple labels, but a geared machine just spinning in place isn't useful yet. We have to engage the transmission. We need to bridge the gap between I hold a spoon and the complex reality of a professional environment, which brings us to the R in our DART method, reason.
And this is where the real magic happens. Human beings are complex creatures. We don't just perform a sterile list of actions. Every action we take is driven by a reason, influenced by an emotion, or connected to a future plan.
So if you only ever practice the simple action labels, you hit a ceiling pretty quickly.
Very quickly, you have to expand that baseline into a more robust formula. Action plus reason, plus emotion or plan.
It's the difference between looking at a flat 2D architectural blueprint and actually walking through a fully framed 3D house. I am making breakfast is the blueprint. It's structurally sound, but nobody lives there.
I love that. We need to add the why and the how to build the house. So instead of just thinking, I am making breakfast, you push your brain one step further. I'm making a heavy breakfast because I have back-to-back meetings today, and I won't have time for a proper lunch. And I feel a bit stressed about it.
Suddenly, you aren't just naming objects. You're generating the exact type of explanatory syntax you need for real human interaction. And I can see how the morning commute is basically a gold mine for this kind of 3D framing.
The commute is the perfect transition zone. You have a captive audience of one. You're alone with your thoughts anyway, so weaponize that time. You start with the simple observation, the blueprint. The traffic is heavy today. Then you layer on your internal reality.
Like, the traffic is heavy, which means I'm going to be late, so I should probably draft a message to my team right now.
Right. You're forcing your brain to simulate the unpredictability of conversation. Because in the real world, someone isn't going to ask you to describe a spoon. They're going to ask, hey, why are you running late? Or what are you working on later?
And if you haven't practiced linking your current state to a future plan in English, you'll freeze and drop right back into the translation track.
Exactly. And we see this play out constantly around one of the most common topics of daily conversation, which is food.
Oh, absolutely. The universal icebreaker.
We talk about our eating habits all the time. But intermediate learners often revert to basic survival English here. They can say, I am eating a sandwich. But if a colleague sits down and asks, what do you usually do for lunch around here? The learner panics.
Because they haven't practiced the vocabulary of habit and preference.
Exactly. By utilizing the reason step during your lunch break, you prepare for this. As you eat, you think, I usually grab something quick like this sandwich because I prefer to use my lunch hour to take a walk.
That is a remarkably natural sentence. It incorporates action, habit, and personal preference. But let me throw a wrench into this engine we're building.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's say I'm on the train and I am constructing this beautiful, complex thought in my head. I am eating a simple lunch because, and suddenly, my brain just stalls. I realize I do not know the English word for leftovers. Or I look down and I want to think, my shirt is wrinkled. But the word wrinkled simply isn't in my vocabulary.
This is the critical moment of failure for most learners.
Right. Do I stop? Do I pull out my phone, open a dictionary app, find the word, and then resume? Or do I just mentally shrug and finish the thought in my native language?
Neither. Opening a dictionary app is actually one of the worst things you can do in that specific moment.
Wait, really? Why? I thought the whole point was to learn new words.
It is, but think about your cognitive state. When you are constructing that English sentence, your brain is operating in an English-only problem-solving mode. The moment you open your phone and look at a dictionary, you're forcing your brain to switch back to your native language's operating system to read the translation.
Oh, so you completely shatter the immersion. You destroy the momentum.
Exactly. When you hit a missing word, you must use a technique called circumlocution.
Circumlocution. So literally talking in circles around the target.
Yes, you use the simple English you already possess to describe the void where the missing word should be. If you like the word wrinkled, what concepts do you possess? You know the word smooth, and you know the word not. So you think, my shirt is not smooth.
Okay, or if I don't know the word leftovers, I bypass it by thinking the food I saved from yesterday.
Precisely. If you are missing the word commute, you substitute the time I spend driving to work.
I see the immediate utility of that, but I have a serious concern here. If I spend 6 months training my brain to refer to leftovers as food from yesterday, aren't I just hardwiring incorrect, clunky English into my permanent memory? Won't I sound bizarre in a real conversation?
That is a very common fear. But it misunderstands how native speakers actually process language. Native speakers forget words all the time. They lose their train of thought. They suffer from tip-of-the-tongue syndrome.
That's true. We do that constantly in our own languages.
And what do? They don't pull out a dictionary. They circumlocute. They say, oh, it's that plastic container thing you put the extra food in.
Yeah, they just describe around it.
Exactly. By practicing circumlocution, you are training your brain to stay calm under pressure and keep the conversational engine running. Momentum is infinitely more valuable than grammatical perfection. You can always look up the precise word wrinkled later that evening. But in the moment, your primary objective is to sustain the English-only cognitive state. You refuse to let your native language rescue you.
That is incredibly liberating. It reframes a missing word from being a failure into being just another puzzle to solve on the fly. And our days are full of these unpredictable puzzles. We spill our coffee, our train is delayed, we lose our keys. We can turn those daily annoyances into fluency training, can't we?
Absolutely. Daily friction is the best practice material. When a problem occurs, use a problem plus response mental framework. Let's say you can't find your wallet. Instead of just feeling a surge of wordless panic, articulate the problem in English. I can't find my wallet.
And then immediately attach your action plan. So I need to retrace my steps and check my jacket pocket.
You are actively managing your own reality in English. That transitions the language from a passive academic subject into an active survival tool.
And that is the exact skill you need when things go wrong in a professional setting. If the projector breaks during your presentation and you've spent months practicing problem plus response in your head regarding lost keys, you won't panic.
No, you'll just seamlessly say, it seems the projector isn't connecting, so I'm going to share the slides directly to your screens. Your conversational confidence will be unshakable because you've practiced navigating friction.
All right, so we've mapped out the day. We greased the gears in the morning. We built 3D thoughts on the commute. We talked our way around missing words at lunch, and we solved problems in the afternoon. The sun is going down. We are back home. We have spent the entire day operating effectively, but entirely inside our own heads. How do we close the loop?
The evening is designed for reflection and synthesis. Now, you don't need to commit to writing a sprawling 10-page journal entry because, let's be honest, you'll abandon that habit by Thursday. Keep it remarkably lightweight.
Right. Keep it simple so you actually do it.
Take exactly 1 minute while you're brushing your teeth or washing your face to ask yourself 3 questions in English. What did I achieve today? What challenged me? And what is my priority for tomorrow?
So, I finished the quarterly report. I struggled with a difficult client call. Tomorrow, I need to prep for the team meeting.
Yes, but we need to add one crucial layer to this evening reflection that learners often avoid: emotional vocabulary.
Oh, we definitely avoid it. When we learn a language, we tend to cling to cold, hard facts. Numbers, schedules, logistics. Emotions feel messy, and we fear we won't have the precise nuance to express them correctly.
We stick to the facts because facts are safe. But human connection is built on shared emotion. If you want to chat like a native, you have to be able to express how a situation impacted you, what frustrated you, what gave you a sense of relief. When you do your evening reflection, try the pattern. Today I did X. It made me feel Y because Z.
So today I finished the quarterly report. I felt a massive sense of relief because the data was incredibly disorganized, and it took twice as long as I expected.
That is a remarkably sophisticated internal monologue. It has action, emotional state, reason, and context.
It is, but at the end of the day, internal monologue isn't speech, is it? Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the T in our DART method. Talk.
Exactly. Thinking happens in Broca's area of the brain, but actual speaking requires the motor cortex. You have to physically coordinate your diaphragm, your vocal cords, your tongue, your lips.
So how do we build the bridge from a mental thought to a physical sound?
You have to physically train the musculature of your mouth to produce the rhythms of English. So the final rule is simple. Once a day, take one of the complex thoughts you've built during your routine and say it out loud.
Just one thought. We don't need to soliloquize for an hour.
Just one well-constructed thought. If you're alone in your car or your apartment, say it at full conversational volume. Even better, use the voice memo app on your phone and record yourself speaking for just 15 to 30 seconds.
I can already feel the collective shudder of the audience. Recording yourself is a deeply uncomfortable experience. Nobody enjoys hearing their own voice played back to them, especially not in a second language where every mistake feels magnified.
It is uncomfortable, but it is the fastest catalyst for improvement. The trick is changing how you listen to the playback. You cannot listen to that audio file like a punitive judge waiting to penalize yourself for dropping a plural S or using the wrong preposition. You have to listen to it like an athletic coach.
How does the coach listen?
The coach listens for function and flow. Did my intended meaning survive? Was my pacing relatively natural, or did I pause for 3 seconds searching for a word? Where did my tongue physically stumble over the pronunciation? You identify the physical friction point, and then, this is the key, you immediately record the exact same thought a second time.
Oh, so it's a dress rehearsal. The first take is just getting the words out of your head and into the air. Your mouth might clumsily trip over the vowels, but that second take, you've already navigated the path once.
Exactly. The second version is inevitably smoother, faster, and more confident. And that tactile sensation of the words flowing easily out of your mouth, that is the physical manifestation of fluency training. It solidifies the bridge.
You've trained your brain to assemble the architecture of the sentence without relying on your native language, and now you have physically trained your motor cortex to execute the delivery. You have bypassed the traffic jam entirely.
When you lay it all out like this, it completely shatters the traditional paradigm of language learning. You aren't desperately trying to carve out 2 hours of free time on a Sunday afternoon to study a textbook.
You don't need free time. Your existing daily routine is your personal, immersive language laboratory. Every cup of coffee you make is an opportunity to grease the neural gears. Every traffic jam is a chance to practice future planning. Every lost set of keys is a real-time problem-solving simulation.
You are quite literally wearing the language. You are living inside the practice material. It transforms English from this heavy academic burden that you carry around in a backpack into the very lens through which you experience the world.
And when the language transitions from an external subject you study into an internal tool you use to navigate your life, fluency ceases to be a distant goal and simply becomes your reality.
It really does.
To get you started on that exact path, I want to leave you with a highly specific challenge. Tomorrow morning, the very second you open your eyes, before you reach for your phone, before you even sit up in bed, I want you to form exactly one English sentence in your mind.
Do not let your native language wake up first.
Right. It could be an observation about the temperature of the room, the sound outside your window, or a thought about how well you slept. Watch how that single, tiny pebble of English dropped into the calm water of your morning creates a ripple of fluency that carries you through your entire day. Remember to throw that dart at your schedule. Daily routine, action, reason, talk. The laboratory's already built, you just have to step inside, keep greasing the gears, keep moving past the roadblocks, and claim your fluency. We'll catch you next time.